This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Empress of Biz, and I am going to say Sal, the Duke of Business show. Today we're doing something a little bit different because we have a business owner who is at the crossroads. Like many business owners, we get at the crossroads. We're not sure we're going forward, backward, or sideways. And we have an acquaintance of Sal Acosta is, and I'm fascinated by this gentleman. We have, that's right, JG Boccella, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And I'm
Uh,
JoAnn Forrester, the Empress of Biz, and that's Sal Acosta there. And JG has built a business that he's now looking to, which many business owners, where do I go? What do I do? I love it, but it needs to go beyond me. And it also needs, I want to be part of it. And we're going to be talking about being at the crossroads. And I've been there. I've owned 5 businesses and saying me at one time. Some I've sold, some I've closed, some I've lost. Uh, but we're still in business. So good morning and welcome to the show, JG.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Joanne. Good morning, Sal. Thank you for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to it.
Okay.
Well, good morning, JG, and welcome. And maybe I'll kick it off because I was reading a little bit of your biography, obviously, and then maybe before we even talk about the crossroads that you are right now, I think it would be nice for everybody to get a little bit of background from you. I was very impressed that you actually went over to Harvard down Mass Ave from where I used to be in Cambridge. I won't hold it against you. And I know you also developed a an interest in improving racial relationships even before you're doing what you're doing now with the Fierce Women project. So could you give us kind of a little bit of background, maybe starting with your years in college, the things you studied, and then maybe some of the things that you did prior to this current project that you're working on?
Yeah, sure, sure. Thanks, Sal. Well, my background is in arts, education, and social justice. And that's really, I'm a recording artist, so it's music and visual art. I'm a painter, recording artist, and educator. And that's all. I love learning. I love education, and so arts and ed are really my background tied with social justice. And honestly, to be honest, ever since I was a kid, I think it's just how I'm wired for whatever reason, but I've always been obsessed with equality and obsessed with everybody being able to be treated equally and with dignity and respect, and just equality and equity and access just since a very young age. So I really was drawn in, and I always share the story about how I remember being a kid at my grandmother's, and she used to have these coffee table like Time Life books, and she had one big life book, and it had images of civil rights and Dr. King and other civil rights revolutionaries and volunteers and workers, and I just remember being very riveted by those black and white images from the civil rights movement, and just really riveted. And I may have been 8 or 9 years old, and I didn't really, it's like it called out to me. I didn't really know why, or I didn't understand what was happening in those images, I think, at that time. But it was just so powerful. And then I think as I got a little bit older and read more about Dr. King and his contemporaries and the work they did, the next thing that happened to me was I began to really just marvel at and wonder, wow, how would someone even summon the requisite courage needed to do what they did? It seemed like a movie. Like, how could real human beings, be so committed to equality and justice that they would risk their lives and do what they did? The level of courage you would need is just astounding. And so I think I was drawn in very early, and then it showed up in my music when I began to write songs and record music. And the first full length album I did was called The Divided States of America. And it was meant to be a concept album about race in America. And then out of that, I I developed this program called The Conversation We Could Be Having. And it's this idea of like, there's a conversation about race in America, and it gets so bound up and jammed up and unproductive, but there's this whole other conversation we could be having, but we never seem to get to. And I think in order for us to actually get to that conversation, and this has a lot of parallels with the conversation around gender and gender equity, but in order to get to that conversation, we need a level of nuance that we don't have right now in this national conversation about race and gender, I think. So develop this conversation we could be having program. And then that morphed and over time and just kind of evolved. But in terms of gender equity specifically, you know, it's something that I never formally studied. I never was engaged really. And it's funny because I have an older sister and a younger sister. And so and my mom's this incredible, strong woman. My wife's the fiercest woman I know. And I have two strong sisters. So like I grew up around amazing, strong women. And so like that to me is like natural. You know, I don't, you know, I love that energy of strong women leaders. So that's very natural to me. But, you know, I remember years ago, there were times when I think both of my sisters at one point or the other had said to me something to the effect of, hey, JG, it's really cool that you're doing this work on race relations. You want to make a difference and do something positive. But how come you're not doing anything about sexism and gender equity? Why don't you say anything about that? And at the time, my reaction was kind of like, well, you know, just because you may have a doctor who's trying to find a cure for cancer, but you wouldn't say to that person, well, don't you care about Alzheimer's? You know, like it's like this is just where I'm focused right now. Of course, I want a cure for Alzheimer's too. But I took that to heart and I thought, well, yeah, well, how do I do that as a man? How can I support gender equity and women's leadership, equal pay? You know, how do I do that? And so I didn't have an answer, you know, but that was thanks to them. That question was coming to for something for me to marinate with. But years went by. And then really what's interesting to me, the FierceWomen project, the company and the platform, it wasn't a grand design. What I think is interesting is that it found me through my artwork. And it was about 6.5 years ago. I asked a friend if I could paint her portrait because I'd always wanted to do portrait. I hadn't done portrait work. I'd done other kinds of abstract painting. And I said, hey, you know, can I paint your portrait? And she said, yeah, sure. And she had a really cool photo she had posted. So I did this portrait based on that image. She loved it. And she said, wow, you know, can I buy this? This is awesome. And I said, yeah, great. Wow, I sold a painting. You can buy it. So then I did another one and another. And honestly, it kind of took on a life of its own. And, you know, about maybe 6 or 8 months into painting these portraits, I just kind of had, you know, this light bulb moment where I I thought like, wow, you know, these women whose portraits I'm painting are all some really strong women leaders, some fierce women, fierce, strong women. And so I thought, wow, maybe I should do a whole portrait series and just call it the FierceWomen Portrait Series. And I really liked the title, and people gave me feedback. They liked that. So I started doing that. But then what happened very quickly was it took on a life of its own, and it morphed from being a portrait series to being this whole platform. And what I noticed when I listened to the women in terms of what they valued as women leaders, there's common themes emerged. They really all valued leadership development. They valued mentoring, and they really valued being able to share their stories in a way that would impact, inspire, and help young women and girls. And so then the question was, okay, how do we bring these women together to share their stories? And the thing is, these strong women leaders who care about that, the problem is they're super duper 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 busy. So it's like, how do we create an experience that is a low time, high impact experience for these women? So, you know, I am based here in Pittsburgh, PA. It's my hometown, and I've been blessed and fortunate that there were some amazing women whose portraits I painted for the series, who were extremely supportive, like Lynn Banaszak over at Carnegie Mellon University. She eternally grateful to her because she hosted our first event at Carnegie Mellon University, and we connected with youth serving nonprofits and schools locally, and had that launch. And people like Christy Uffelman, who has Align Leadership, who's been incredibly supportive from the get-go. In fact, it was Christy who said to me early on, JG, she encouraged me so much to think about big picture and what this could mean. She said, JG, this is huge. Fierce Women this is a movement. Like, go big with this. This is a movement. And she was, just amazing. And so I appreciate her support, and so many others locally and nationally who have been so supportive of Fierce Women Project. So I don't know. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into about like the concept.
I have a question to ask, JG. You paint these portraits, right, of these women. What exactly happens then afterwards?
Well, I should say, because I know we have limited time, but to be honest with you, the model for the business really morphed, so that, as I said, initially it was a portrait series, but what happened was, since it morphed into this platform, then interestingly to me, the portraits kind of receded. So the portraits sort of ended up just functioning as like a portal, if you will, into this whole process, so that like the images on the website, students could see these images and say, oh, that's a real person. Hey, she's chief of surgery at this hospital. I'd love to meet her. Oh, well, guess what? I can meet her at this event they're having, and talk to her, shake her hand, ask her questions. And so right now, the portraits have kind of, again, gone into the background. So in the tagline for Fierce Women is portraits of possibility. So we went from a literal portrait into a figurative, metaphorical portrait of your future self. So for the girls, it's like, well, let's help you with these tools so you can create this vision of your future self, and hopefully expand your sense of what's possible for your future after you've seen all these amazing women and what they've done, and read about them, met them, and read about other historical fierce women, and just that process, getting that inspiration and seeing really through hearing their stories and hearing about their journey, what's possible. So hopefully we can expand their sense. That's the core question of the whole brand, is what's possible. And the idea is we're going to help them create a future self-portrait. That's the, future self-portrait. And I created, a couple years in, I created the vision book, the Fierce Women Vision Book, which was this idea of vision board. How people have vision boards where they put on their sort of vision for their future, what they want to work towards and manifest. And so this idea was a vision board in a book, and I broke it into these sections: who, what, when, where, why, and how. So that's really, so now there are other elements around scaling the company to have impact on a large scale that really have nothing to do with the portraits, the physical paintings anymore. So
now, JG, let me ask you this, because I know, because of the research into the background that I've done and in preparation for this interview, and before we even get to the part about the crossroads that you are right now, and maybe what you're looking for in the future. But I know part of the project is also to provide, I'll call it an avenue for men that want to get involved and help in some way, whether it's mentorship or in some other capacity, to allow them to sort of channel their interest, and turn it maybe from an interest into something real life and practical. So could you talk a little bit about that for a second?
Yeah, thanks, Sal. That's a great question. And again, the way this whole thing has evolved organically. I made a conscious decision early on. If this is about women's leadership and I'm a man, what's my role here? How do I support strong women leaders, instead of trying to put myself in the center, centering myself, as they say, trying to like learn about, that's not my role. I want to support these amazing women. And so I asked them, well, will you lead me in this process? Tell me, what am I supposed to be doing here? And so that in itself became this idea of women's leadership in relation to male leaders in the world across sectors. How many men have sought out your leadership? And that's a whole other conversation. So I made a conscious decision to seek out the leadership of these awesome women leaders. And when I did, what they ended up telling me was over time, hey, JG, we love FierceWomen. We love the concept. This isn't like any other like networking meetings we go to or events, and this is different, special, it's unique. We love the name. We love everything you're doing with this, and we want to support it big time. But, how do we get more men engaged? How do we get more men involved and engaged in wanting to support women's leadership, women leaders, gender equity, equal board representation, equal pay, all that stuff? How do we get more men engaged? So that's your assignment. Essentially, in so many words, they were saying, JG, that's your homework. That's your assignment. Go get the men, So like, I had no idea. I said, yeah, great question. How do we do that? How do we get more men engaged? And so that led me to the next piece, which is this concept in this framework I developed called Bring Your Strength. And I wrote a small little booklet, and it's for sale on Amazon. I put it out there. It outlines the framework. It's just a little pocketbook called Bring Your Strength. And it's like this new paradigm. And essentially what it is it's kind of counterintuitive, because instead of casting a wide net and saying, okay, all men, here's what you need to do, get in line. It's like, well, let's start with the men who are actually there, who are ready to go from awareness into powerful action on gender equity. And when I say that, you might think, oh, you mean like activist guys or men who are marching in the streets? And no, that's the wild thing is I'm not really talking about folks who are in an academic activist modality, who hardcore activism, hardcore academics working on gender studies and gender equity. That work is really crucial and essential, but there's this whole group of men out there, and I call them the hidden demographic. And I don't know if it's 5% of all men, 10%, but even if it's 10% of all the men in all the different companies and all the different sectors, that's millions of guys, right? And so the hidden demographic, these men, they're not activists, as I said, but they're also not in denial about the need for change. Because you have a lot of guys who are decent guys who just sort of don't get what all the fuss is about. They get it. Yeah, women, okay, I get it. But they don't really they haven't had a chance to hear the stories of what women are dealing with at every level day to day, not just sexual harassment, but just beyond that Me Too stuff, just beyond all that, just around leadership and everything, big to small. So they haven't really been exposed to those conversations. But there are men in that hidden demographic, if it's 10%, let's just say, who aren't in denial about the need for change and who get it. Like, yeah, this is crazy. If my daughter graduates college next year, I want her to get paid the same as this guy she sits next to in class. It's crazy. Of course. So where do I sign? I'll check that box. Yeah, women should get paid the same. So those guys, but they're not going to go march for women's rights 5 days a week. And that's okay. They don't have to be activists. But the thing is, that group of men, I really believe, represents a huge potential lever for change and a huge untapped resource. It's like they want this. They're ready to go, but they don't have a roadmap. They don't have the language. They don't have a framework. There's not it's like, okay, yeah, what's the next move? How do we go from this awareness into action? Do I mentor somebody? Do I do this? But instead of just individual checklists like, hey guys, try not to be so sexist, go find a mentee, instead of just that, there's a profound thing we could do here. I see it as a huge opportunity. It's like this epic call to men. And I always say, like the current model is basically, okay, all right, guys, we're going to have a diversity inclusion event at the company. We want you to come, and we're going to do an implicit bias training, an unconscious bias. We're going to teach you about all your implicit biases. And this has been going on the past year or two. Implicit bias, and we all carry implicit biases for gender, for race, whatever it is. And that's okay. That is what it is as human beings. But so they do this training, and that's great. And it's a great, important, necessary first step. But the problem is, what's step 2? Right now, there's no compelling step 2. Okay, well, what do we do after implicit bias training? How do we go from this important awareness into powerful action? So that's really what this is designed to do. And the last thing I'll say on that is I always like to share the analogy of Habitat for Humanity. So Habitat is an invitation to folks like, hey, guys, let's come and build this family a home. They literally need a house, a roof over their heads. Let's do it. So we come together as a group of people, community, build a house. And then when it's done, guess what? You get to walk away from that volunteer experience with this amazing feeling awesome. Like, wow, we just literally built somebody a house. That's incredible. So you get to walk away feeling like that. And it's not an ego trip. It's like, this is just great. We helped somebody. We did the right things. It's powerful. Changed the life. So now imagine, I got curious about, well, instead of, hey guys, stop doing this, don't do that, and all right, do this and that. What if we made it this powerful invitation to those men in the hidden demographic? And hey guys, I want to invite you to a process. And I know you've been socialized to think you have to be tough and rough and you support women, it means you're weak, and all those crazy things we learned that are ridiculous. But it's like, guess what? You don't have to leave your manhood, your masculinity at the door. Bring it to the table. Bring all your ideas about strength. Bring it all to the, not the toxic, in quote, kind, but bring all that positive energy to the table, and let's create with these amazing women leaders. So it's like Habitat for Humanity. Imagine if we can invite men into a process around supporting women's leadership and gender equity that was awesome and powerful and exciting and dynamic, and that an experience from which they can walk away feeling great. And instead of just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should do this because I want to support the women. It's more like, yeah, let's do this. And okay. And so they're on board, and you create an experience that, frankly, this kind of change will have reverberations for our kids, their kids. So it's really I call this epic call to men. And you don't have to be an activist to do this. That's what I want to stress. You don't. So, and I give all respect and love to the activists who are doing great work and the academics. It's necessary. But I think there's a real lever for change here, right under our noses.
One of the things that I need to step in here, because this is really I've been at this a long time, so I understand what you're saying. One of the things that I have learned, because I've owned construction companies, so I've had to work with guys that when I walk on the site, when I originally started to walk on the site, they were like, oh, good grief, what is she doing here?
Yeah.
And then I would just say, I'm the one that's making your paycheck, so you be happy, I'm here. So, but I had to learn that, and I had some very good male mentors that you said, if you're going to be in this particular field, you're going to have to toughen up. So I learned how to toughen up, but I also learned how to use my natural skills as as someone who liked to nurture. So when I would walk onto the construction site, and if I had cookies, everybody knew it was okay.
Yeah.
When I walked in without cookies and a sheet of papers in my hand, they're going, oh God, she's going to kill us. And that would be the day that we would have a lot of confrontation. But what I learned is when you talk about projects, we need very specific things to do and tasks, and that's important. Just talking is not going to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
what you have done is you've taken a passion of yours, and when your sisters challenged you, you were encouraged to go further. And you've turned it into a business that you are much in love with, and you've used all your skills. Is that kind of what you see yourself doing?
Well, kind of, sort of, and I just want to hasten to add, because as soon as you say that, like, turn it into business, I can already hear like certain people saying like, this is crazy. He's like profiting off of, discrimination. He's going to make a business. So, a lot of people think this has to be a nonprofit. Why is it for profit? But really, it's social entrepreneurship. And frankly, I have learned, again, thanks to my wife and my sisters and mother, that, and I kind of knew this, but at first it was like, well, I just want to honor these strong women. I'm a painter. I'm an artist. I want to do these paintings and honor them and make a living, have to feed my family. I sell my artwork. But it's like, but then I came to understand through their help too that, well, yeah, I know you just want to honor, but really, if it's Fierce Women Project, a woman should be leading this, I think. And they, and so I do think a woman should be CEO of Fierce Women. And I do think it should be majority women owned and majority women led. And same with Bring Your Strength around gender equity. I really do. So I really want to move into a support role. I believe in these ideas. I think they have a lot of value. And I'm really, just last night, actually, I got to meet an amazing young woman entrepreneur whose name is Caitlin Grasso. And she was here at the Ellis School last night to give a talk. And I went to see it about the entrepreneurial mindset. And she started a company 5 years ago. She's only I think 26 years old or something. She graduated Wharton School of Business and got this inaugural $150,000 grant. They gave it to 4 seniors to start a company that could change the world. And she's really extraordinary, very down to earth and nice, and just really ambitious and amazing, just impressive how much she wants to make a difference. And she gave a great presentation last night at LS. It really inspired me. But see, her company is called Genheration. So it's a play on the word generation, but with HER in the middle. So it's genheration.com. They have something like 250,000 subscribers already. And so they're a for-profit model, but they're straight up doing social change work around gender equity. And they connect women in high school and college with corporations and on a mentoring level. And this is just amazing work. So that just really was great to see that social entrepreneurship works for social change. Because for me, I think the challenge with Fierce Women, when I started talking to people about looking for my CEO search, I started a couple of years ago, and I had some really amazing conversations and close calls. I almost found the right CEO, but it didn't happen. And investors, a lot of people didn't get the concept, and it was a few people were I get this, but most people, and understandably so, thought, oh, this sounds like a nonprofit, JG. I've heard that so many times I can't even tell you. Yeah, it sounds like a nonprofit. And my contention has always been, well, no, this isn't a not-for-profit. It's social entrepreneurship, and it can have bigger impact, frankly, as a for-profit than a not-for-profit, in my opinion. So yeah, I am actively trying to find, a buyer to be CEO of Fierce Woman and really scale it up and go crazy with it. And that's why meeting Caitlin last night, we're actually going to be talking more about collaboration and possibilities, because what she's doing with Genheration is so aligned with Fierce Woman. It's just so incredibly aligned. So that is really the kind of entrepreneur that I'm actually looking for to buy Fierce Woman. And Bring Your Strength is kind of like a twin brand, because it's so related.
JG, let me ask you this, because obviously, as you know, I'm a business broker, and always when we talk about selling a business, and by the way, I want to, for anybody that's listening and maybe even thinking about this, one of the things that I think is very good, interesting, and exciting about the way JG is setting it up is he is not looking to make an outright sale, but to retain both a role in the company, which I think is very important, and also some level of equity in the company. And that's always a sort of a signal, if you will, that that person that is selling is not looking to run away from a company or a business in their situation because it's there's some skeleton in the closet or something hidden behind the curtain, but quite the contrary, they recognize that maybe there's a need for a change of leadership to be able to take the company to the next level, but they still want to be involved. They still see the vision. They still think, quite honestly, they can make some money in the equity they retain when this goes to the next level. But
And
having said all that, and
I'm sorry, I was
I
just
know
joking,
you've done
because
this
when you said
exercise.
the equity, I was just saying, and I always say, and you can make the check out straight to my wife, and I'm not even kidding. It's I say, I want Fierce Women to be women-owned majority, and as I want to maintain maybe 15 to 20% ownership after I sell it and stay on to help in terms of I've been building the vision for it for 6.5 years, in terms of like all the ideas around the app and all the in terms of the bigger picture ideas. I would love to stay on around that piece of it. But yeah, as far as the equity, I would say like you can make the check right out to my wife, and I'm not even joking, because I want that money that comes from FierceWomen to go to women, and I'll go and do my music. But go ahead. So I didn't mean to cut
Well,
you
no, I
off.
was just going to ask you because I know you've done this exercise, and without necessarily, unless you wanted to talking about a sales price or individual dollars associated to individual things, but could you just list sort of the main assets, and I know a lot of these are intangible, but just kind of list out the assets that would be involved in this sale, so people have an idea of, okay, these are all the assets that I would be getting that you've developed over 6.5 years as part of this transaction. Of course, needless to say, the biggest asset being that you're going to stay around and help them. That's invaluable. So setting that one aside.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, I would say that I appreciate that, Sal, but I would say the biggest asset would be the intellectual property, the actual concept and brand, the name. So the name FierceWomen Project, the brand, what it means, portraits, the tagline, portraits of possibility, the name, bring your strength, that, and the framework around when I talked about the hidden demographic. There's literally such a huge need for this. Like there's so many people asking like, yo, where are the guys? Like, what do we do after implicit bias training? I've talked to so many people said, yeah, we had a great implicit bias program 3 months ago. It was awesome. But now like nothing's changed with the organization. So it's like, there's such a huge need for this in the market. And I can tell you in terms of differentiation, talk about a product or service differentiation in the marketplace space. There's literally, and this isn't hype, you can check it, there's nothing at all right now like the framework I developed for Bring Your Strength in terms of like specifically the language around a hidden demographic of men, and it isn't just philosophical, it's like a whole framework of a program about how to engage those men. And so there's literally nothing right now out there like that. So that, I think, really is the main value, is the intellectual property, the framework. And now for FierceWomen, you have the name, you have the whole framework with the app. We have, and that was one thing. I really ran out of capacity, and it was just like I didn't have a staff, I didn't have investor money. I was trying to do everything, and it just got really stressful and had issues big time around just keeping up with everything. And but in terms of the app, we haven't developed yet. But the whole app framework and I'll share one element of it, which is the FierceWomen Library, which is a curated list of books. So educators, people who run after school programs all across the country could just go look at the list and order whatever books. They're biographies and autobiographies of amazing women leaders, past and present, and leadership and mentoring theme, essentially amazing stories of these women all across the country, all across the world. They can read, they can decide which ones they want to buy for their school or after school program. They can buy 20, 50, 100, 200, and then create a FierceWomen library, like an alcove. So you can have like a tremendous after school, out of school program for middle school girls and high school girls, to have like a book club thing with FierceWomen. So they go through a process. I developed the FierceWomen vision book, as I said. So there's the vision book workshop process framework, which is an 8-week framework around an intro, creative process, and who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then a wrap up, and all that curriculum is all there. And so, but in terms of having a FierceWomen alcove and a FierceWomen library, you have an online and then a physical space, but then it's ties into the academics of history and literature and English, reading, writing, comprehension, study, all that group study. So they're studying these amazing women from the book list, drawing inspiration from it, and then working on their own visions. And that's, going back to Caitlin's talk last night at Ellis, she really, the two things she was talking about in her research were, you know, role models, and then the research they done when they asked young girls, like, who are your role models? And most couldn't name more than two. It was like, well, my mom and my sister, you know, but they really couldn't. So there's a gap there in terms of having role models, going back to what is possible. So this two-step process in the whole framework. And again, this is the value of the company. This is the intellectual property. It's this framework, which is first discovering these awesome women, current, local, national, historical. It's all about biography, autobiography, discovering them, discussing them as a group, connecting with your peers as a student. And then step one, discovery. Step two, creation of your vision. So they're beginning to work on their vision books, on their vision of what's possible for their future. And so that whole thing, I think that's the heart of the brand and the platform. Then also there's another functionality with the app that we haven't been able to yet build out, which is like a calendar functionality, so that these super busy women, as I mentioned before, we create a low time, high impact experience for these women. So it's like, hey, instead of donating $300 to Girls Inc. or anybody that you might feel good about donating to a nonprofit that serves young women and girls, that's great. But, you know, wouldn't you rather have a hands-on, or not rather, I don't want to take money out of their pockets or say, but like in addition to, or rather this year, instead of writing a check for $300, why don't you sign up for a $10 a month subscription? So like $120, say, for FierceWomen membership. And what you can do is have this incredible volunteer experience where you can go share your story with these other amazing women leaders and have this impact. Now, this isn't just theoretical. When we had my former business partner, Christina, in Las Vegas, had run a number of these in the past 2 years. And we had feedback from women who came to talk to these girls. A couple were in low-income areas with not a lot of resources. And the women went and did the model that we had. And the response we got was phenomenal. It was like, one woman said, you know, I had a talk with my mentee, the most meaningful talk in 9 years after we did this. And another woman was like, that was the most powerful thing I've done in 30 years, sharing my story with these girls. So it's really a powerful experience. But we want to get to the point where we have the app working with the calendar functionality so that it's really win-win-win. You have youth serving nonprofits around the country who would love to have more and more strong women leaders from their communities come and talk to their girls. They want that. Like, that's high value to them. It's high value to the girls to get to meet these women who are awesome leaders in their community, who frankly, they wouldn't otherwise have any opportunity to meet, again, in a small group setting, talk to them. And the other beautiful thing that happened when we did these is spontaneously, without me even formally asking any of the women to donate or do anything, they just spontaneously said, hey, you know, if you're interested in law, you can come down. I'm a partner at the firm. You can come to the law firm with your mom or dad or guardian, whoever, and I'll show you around. You can meet the partners and learn about it. They just volunteered that. Another was an entrepreneur who said, hey, you know, you make these amazing bags and you're 12 and you want to learn about entrepreneurship. I have a table at the next conference. You can come and have space at that table. They just spontaneously offer these things to these girls. So it's really powerful. So, but to be able to have it with the bigger vision of scaling this is they can imagine the super busy woman who cares about this. She's a FierceWomen membership. She sees it. She clicks on her app and it's like, oh, okay, next Tuesday at 7, I have a window. Oh, I can go to Big Brothers Big Sisters across town, or right here there's a Girls Inc. and there's an open slot. Click. I've been pre-approved. I'm already part of the system because of FierceWomen membership. Click. All they have to do is click and show up on Tuesday at 7, and they're going to share their story with 2 other awesome women leaders from the community. And then the girls are meeting these women. So it's win-win-win. So that's the piece that has a huge amount of value, I believe, and that's the piece we want to scale. And that's why, again, I was excited about Caitlin's presentation, because part of their model already is that they're in all of these different cities, connecting girls with women, but in a different context, but related.
So you have developed a curriculum and workbooks and process that basically facilitate your goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. But then also too, I want to add that I really think with FierceWomen, I see it as a very contemporary brand, and I really think merchandise. I've always, and this is another one, I'm not, I could be wrong, but there are two things that I've always gotten pushback from that I still firmly, maybe I'm just stubborn, but I just don't believe. One is like, oh no, this should be a nonprofit, JG, and I never bought that. And that's why, again, Caitlin seeing her thing last night was validation, was like, wow, they could have said the same thing about Generation. But so there's that. And the other thing is, I've said, no, I see FierceWomen, the name and the painting, the images, like on merchandise, like on notebooks, and like not just tchotchkes, like just random tchotchkes, but stuff that's relevant to education, to girls, like a backpack or whatever, and even some apparel. Fine.
Hey,
But
JG, let me stop you there, because that's actually going to dovetail well into a question that I wanted to ask you, and I'm assuming you've thought about this, and if I'm just way off in left field, feel free to say that, but and maybe this could also be part of the scaling in the future, but have you thought of having a physical location? And by that, I mean, maybe not even necessarily a retail store, but I'm thinking more like a museum and a gallery, and where a lot of the portraits could be displayed, a lot of these items could be displayed, and maybe even for sale, but also maybe like a small place where somebody could give a talk to a medium-sized group, I'm going to say. So have you thought of having a physical location somewhere?
I love that, Sal. I'm so glad you asked me about that. And that's been a part of my challenge and frustration with this whole thing, is I just didn't have capacity. Like I've talked to a number of people about exhibitions, and frankly, I felt really bad. And I have to apologize to the women who've been so supportive, but I've got jammed up where I have paintings in storage. I haven't gotten there with the kind of exhibitions that I want to have for the paintings. And we did the Harvard series too, and we had talks up at Harvard about having the exhibition, one of the exhibitions there, and we did an event up at Brown, and the piece of I just, it's been one of the things that's really weighed on me, is like, because I want to fulfill my promise to, I that's part of this picture, is an exhibition of the work, and I ran out of cash around the growth piece of this, and so that's, yes, that, I think that's a huge thing, and I love everything you said there, Sal, and I could also see kind of like, yeah, not a traditional retail location, but a multi-use thing where you could have even what I described that they do with the nonprofits, but in terms of like the talks and the workshop, but then also a gallery space. I think that would be ideal, to have the art in the space, and then to have the regular talks there, and to have a store that sold the FierceWomen merchandise. That'd be phenomenal. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking. And to me, what would be exciting is you go to one of these talks, so you hear the person live speaking, maybe even get to meet them, shake their hand, do whatever interaction you can do. But then when you go into the gallery, you see their portrait, and you see 9 other portraits, and you say, oh my God, just like this person here in this portrait is real, and I just listened to them speak and met them in
Right.
person minutes ago. All these other 9 are too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just kind of gets you going.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the other thing that reminds me, a while ago when we were discussing like scaling, that was something that was kind of discussed, because you can take an image and put it on merchandise and then make a million of those things. But then in terms of the experience of each individual getting a portrait, there were talks about, well, down the road, we could maybe commission a photographer, so it's a photographic portrait, or we could, really play with this term portrait, because I said the girls are creating a portrait of their future selves, a metaphorical portrait. And so, it's the tagline's portraits of possibility. But even though I can only, as a painter, paint so many portraits, and I ran up against it, and I got behind, and it was just stressed, but we could have a student element. This was one of the conversations, and I'm not saying this is officially baked into the current model, but that was a conversation in the past around like, well, we still could have, say, people who are in art schools, young women artists who paint a portrait of the woman in their community, and they can exhibit in that city, and it can scale that. It doesn't have to be me painting the portrait. So that's a possibility. That's another potential way, we could do that.
So you're at the stage where you're looking for a person or persons who would come in and become a partner, become investors, really, and you would give up equity in the business to have the right people involved that tie into your vision of getting these products out and methods out. That's basically where we're at.
Yeah, and I don't know, JoAnn, I always like to remain open to process, and I don't know if the scenario is an investor and then a CEO and a team, or investors, plural, and team, or somebody because I've talked to some amazing women who are serial entrepreneurs who were interested in FierceWomen, who sold their company for, say, $30 million. And it's like they're looking for the next project. So they could come in as investor and CEO. You know what I mean? So I'm open. It could be somebody who's like, okay, I'm the CEO. I'm not bringing money to the table, but I have access to venture money or whatever, investor money. So I don't know if it's a combination of investor money and CEO team, or if it's just, someone who's sort of in both roles and has tons of experience doing this, has infrastructure in place. Now, I've talked to other women on my CEO search and investor search who've run unrelated businesses or similar businesses who were interested in this. It's like, okay, I can do this. I did retail. I did, it was, and they could probably do a great job. Now, what's interesting and exciting to me, again, about talking to Caitlin last night at her event, was like her current company, Generation, is literally doing so much that's already aligned with this work. It's like, it's so complementary. So somebody like that would be amazing, but again, I'm open. It can be somebody who sold furniture and made a lot of money with the furniture company, and they understand business and entrepreneurship. So, I'm open to whatever permutation.
Yeah, so you could even be some type of merger where the value that they bring to the table in exchange for the equity in your company is part of the value from their company that they've developed. That now together there's a strong synergy between what they've done and what you've done, and each side brings kind of that set of values to the table, which I think that would be awesome. JoAnn, I hate to tell you, because time always flies when you and I have these guests and we get wrapped up in all this, but we're getting close to, believe it or not, the 1 hour mark here.
Yeah.
And I know we try to keep these interviews to an hour or less, so people can listen as they're doing their commute and or whatever at home. But I don't know if you have any final questions, or if you want to try to wrap it up and summarize.
Well, one of the things that I want to kind of wrap it up is that what I hear going on is what I've said before, is that you're at the crossroads, which many entrepreneurs get to. Do I go forward? Do I go backwards? Do I stop? Do I bring someone in? How do I find like-minded partners, that whether we merge our skills and talents or what? So that this has been a interesting conversation, and I hope it's kind of clarifying for you, because what you want can be accomplished, but you have to clarify what you want. That's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want investors, I want someone to bring in a CEO or something like that, then you're the leader of this. You're still the creator, and even though you're willing to give up a position, from my viewpoint, you got to know what you want so you can attract and bring in what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
what is the what is the best way to contact you, JG?
Oh yeah, right. I still need an easier email, but there's a contact. If you go to Fierce Women Online, there's a contact form there. So fiercewomenonline.com is the site. fiercewomenonline.com. And there's a contact form there. But if you want to go straight to me in my Gmail, and my name has an Italian name, which people always miss, the two C's, two L's, but you can send me a direct email at JG B, not V, B as in boy, JGBOCCELLA @gmail.com. Again, people write one C, one L, two C's. Just last night, someone wrote two S's. Like, even when I say it, it's like a mental thing. It's really bizarre, but I'll say it again. It's JGBOCCELLA @gmail.com. And I know I need to get an easier email, but that's the quickest way to get to me.
Sal, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, before I even say that, let me say real quick, and maybe I'm a little bit more comfortable with the ambiguity, but I would encourage anybody that any of this conversation has struck a chord. Obviously, JG is very passionate. Again, he's open to different ways of skinning the cat. No pun intended. The people from PETA, please don't kill me for that one. But I would encourage anybody that's interested to err on the side of having a conversation. I always say for a deal to get done, it always has to start with a conversation. Maybe you agree that there's a fit. Maybe you agree that there's not a good fit. If that's the case, you've met JG, which I think is a fantastic thing anyway. And by the way, if you still didn't catch his email, feel free to contact me. I'd be more than happy to pass on the information to JG, because my email luckily is a little easier. Mine is Sal, SAL 459 @yahoo.com. Again, SAL for Sal 459 @yahoo.com. If people want to call me, feel free. My personal cell phone, area code 484-358-9470. Again, 484-358-9470. And all our contact information on YouTube, by the way, if you do the show more, all our contact information will be there in writing, as well as websites and JG's website, and all the information for all of us. And again, if for whatever reason you want to contact me first, I'm more than happy to pass on the information to JG.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. And yes, I'm glad you said that. I'm open. I've learned over time that things you might think is this, but there's a slight variation. And so I'm very open to, again, different permutations of this. I'm open to hearing different things and things I may not have considered in terms of how to structure. So I'm very open. Also, too, I forgot to say, if you email me, please put Fierce Women in the subject header, just so I know there's so much email that comes through. Just that is easier to catch. Just put Fierce Women in the subject header, please.
And the best way to contact me, the Gmail is Empress, EMPRESS of biz, BIZ @gmail.com. Telephone number is 412-440-6969. That's 412-440-6969. Empress of Biz, JoAnn Forrester. I also have Facebook page, Empress of Biz, Listen, Learn, Prosper. Please take a look at that. We're always putting something on using our 35 plus years experience. Between Sal and I, we have over 60 some years of experience, and we were 5 when we started. So, okay. But also I want to mention, because
that was the lemonade stand.
Yeah. This is a calendar that I have developed in conjunction with the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement. Women's voices, hear them speak. And it's 12 women, past and present, who are examples of fierce women who have made differences in our lives today, who have fought for our rights, who have been fierce about protecting and claiming our rights. So We do that every year, and every year we sell out. So if anybody wants to contact me about that, again, 412-440-6969. And we are looking for sponsors so that we can keep on bringing you this. And a last minute, any last minute things, Sal?
No, just want to appreciate JG for his time, sharing his work, sharing his passion, sharing his background. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sal. Thank you, JoAnn. I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and your passion on a much needed subject that we talked about. Okay,
Absolutely.
folks, we're going to do a wrap. May you have a profitable and prosperous month and find something that excites you and makes your life great.